Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. As per the usual, I am Gabble. Gabble. Greetings and salutations, welcome back. This is probably the first video of the new year, actually, because I've had a backlog of videos, so this will be the first one I've actually recorded. It is currently February 19th, so as you can see, we are back at the unboxing table, and today I have several more decks that I went through and wanted to show you guys. There was a challenge that was issued by some of my gaming circle that there was a 32 card deck challenge. Essentially what it did was it gave you 32 mana symbols to build certain decks. You had 5 of one color land, then the next 5 were 2 color lands, 3 color lands, 4 color lands, and decks of 5 colors. So a little bit of variety, which got me pulling out all my decks and looking through here. So I also had to take account of what decks that I've already unlocked or unboxed. So yeah, so I got a list of brand new ones. So without further ado, let's get back into it. The next deck will be another tribal themed deck. It's Knights. I believe it's a 4-color Knight deck. Black, white, green, red. I could be wrong, but it was a very early build, and sometimes it works, sometimes it not. So, first up, let's take a leak. First up, we have the Darmoor Lancer, 6-drop, 3/3, 4 colorless, 2 black, creature Knight. When Darmoor Lancer comes into play, destroy target non-black creature. Next up, Standard Swamp. Next up, we have a card from Portal, Sacred Knight, 4-drop, 3/2, 3 colorless, 1 white. Sacred Knight can't be intercepted by black or red creatures. Yeah, that was their style of blocking back in when Portal was a thing. Next up, we have the Gustcloak Cavalier, 5-drop, 3/2, or 2/2, 3 colorless, 2 white, flanking. Whenever a creature without flanking blocks this creature, the blocking creature gets -1/-1 till end of turn. When Gustcloak Cavalier attacks, you may tap target creature. When Gustcloak Cavalier becomes blocked, you may untap Gustcloak and remove him from combat. So draw him out perfectly. Next up, we have the Zeraphim Commander, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white, Summon Knight, flanking, and 1 colorless, 2 white. Target Knight gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Next up, we have the Knight Errant, 2-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 1 white. Nilla. I'm going to sneeze, so give me a moment. So, next up, we have the Charging Paladin, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white. Knight. If Charging Paladin attacks, it gets +0/+3 until end of turn. Next up, we have the Shadow Rider, 4-drop, 3/3, 2 colorless, 2 black, flanking. Then we have an Unknown Shores, land, tap, add 1 colorless to your mana pool. Pay 1 colorless, tap 1 mana of any color to your add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Next up, we have a Shimmering Grotto, land, tap 1 color, add 1 color's mana to your mana pool. Pay 1, tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Standard Mountain. Next up, we have the Duhati Mercenary, 3-drop, 2/1, 2 colorless, 1 black, Shadow. This creature can only block or be blocked by other creatures with Shadow. So it was the first generation of Fear. And surprisingly, it's got 1 colorless, 1 black. The Mercenary gets +1 until end of turn. So it's black fire breathing. Next up, we have the Zeraphim Knight, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white, flanking, and pay 2 white, first strike until end of turn. Next up, we have the Dimir Guildgate, land Gilgate. Gate. Dimir Gilgate enters the battlefield tapped. Add blue or black to your mana pool. Now, surprisingly, this the Benderlish I can't speak today. Calvary, 2-drop, 2-2, 1 colorless, 1 white, flanking. I have 3 different artworks from 3 different sets of the same character in this deck. It's pretty interesting. Next up, we have the White Knight, 2 blue. 2 white, 2/2, first strike, pro black. And then we got a standard island. Next up, we have the Salteri Lancer, 3-drop, 2/2. 2 colors, 1 white, excuse me. Shadow, first strike, and win attack. First strike, win attack. Next up, we have Holy Day. Prevent all combat damage that we dealt this turn. Next up, we have the Skulking Knight, 3-drop, 3/3, 2 colorless, 1 black, flanking. Next up, we have the Knight of the Holy Nimbus, 2 white, 2/2, flanking. If Knight of the Holy Nimbus would be destroyed, regenerate it, 2 colorless. Knight of Holy Nimbus can't be regenerated this turn. Only an opponent's may pay this ability. So, one of the first one to explain into, hey, letting your other players do stuff to build up stocks, to, I don't know, add counts to storm counts, or other interesting manners. Just like how they did in the Cavo deck, where you can have a target player gain life and it does things. So, next up we have Blood Knight, 2 color, 2 red, 2/2, Knight, first strike, pro white. I believe that is the time warped version, time spiral version of the other Knight that we just shed. Next up, we have Knight of Dusk, 3-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 2 black. Pay 2 black, destroy target creature blocking Knight of Dusk. Next up, we have the Knight of Thorn, 4-drop, 3 colorless, 1 white, 2/2, protection from red and banning. Banning was one of the first mechanics that they came up where having instead of declaring your double blockers like they do nowadays, you had banning, which means you could ban a couple of your creatures together to essentially do the same thing. Then we have a standard mountain. Next up, we have the Order of the Golden Cricket, 2-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 1 white. When Order of the Golden Cricket attacks, you may pay white. If you do, it gains flying until end of turn. Next up, we have the Veteran Cavalier, 2-drop, 2/2, 2 white, vigilance. Next up, we have the Knight of Dawn, 3-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 2 white, first strike, pay 2 white. Knight of the Dawn gains protection from color of your choice until end of turn. Next up, we have the Jupiter Order Advocate, 3-drop, 2 colorless, 1 white, 1/2. As long as Jupiter Order Advocate is untapped, all green creature you control get +1/+1. Next up, it's Knight of the Mist, 3-drop, 2 colorless, 1 blue, 2/2, flanking, and when Knight of the Mist comes into play, pay blue or bury target Knight. It's where they had the first version of phasing as well. Next up, we have another mountain. We have another plane. Then we have another Holy Day. Then we have a Calvary Master, 4-drop, 3/3, 2 colorless, 2 white. Flanking, other creatures you control with flanking have flanking. So each instance of flanking triggers separately. So essentially you can stack your -1s, essentially. It's one of those weird, not many people will pay attention to it because it's of the old school rules, but it is what it is. Next up we have Youthful Knight, 2-drop, 2/1, 1 colorless, 1 white, first strike. Next up we have the Knight of Shurzy, 4-drop, 2/2, 3 colorless, 1 white. Human Knight, flanking, suspend 3. Rather than play this card from your hand, you may pay 1 white and remove it from the game with 3 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When last counter is removed, Play it without paying its mana cost. And it has haste. Then we have Standard Island. Number 2 of the Belerish Knight. This is the 10th edition variation. Next up we have the Boros Guildgate. Boros Guildgate enters the pay tapped, add red or white to your mana pool. Standard Mountain, Standard Plain, Mountain. Next up we have the Alaborn Cavalier, 4-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 2 white. If Alaborn Cavalier attacks, you may choose to tap any one creature. Tapped creatures can't block. Another Portal series card. Another island. Next up we have the Lionheart Maverick, 1-drop, 1/1, 1 white. Vigilance, pay 5, 4 colorless, 1 white. Lionheart gets +1/+2 until end of turn. You can pay that as many times as you want. And we got a plain, standard plain, standard island. Next up we have Knight of Valor, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white. Flanking, pay 1 white, 1 colorless, 1 white. Each creature without flanking blocking Knights of Valor gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Use the ability only once per turn. And that was a Visions card. Next up we have the Cavardis, a Cadaverous Knight, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 black, 2/2, flanking, and pay 1 colorless, 2 black, regenerate. Standard plain. Next up we have the Paladin of Prahav, 6-drop, 3/4, 4 colorless, 2 white. Whenever Paladin of Prahav deals damage, you gain that much life. Forecast, 1 colorless, 1 white. Reveal Paladin of Prahav from your hand. Whenever target creature deals damage this turn, you gain that much life. So it's a Soul Link early edition. Next one up, we have the Hobgoblin Dragoons, 3-drop, 2 colorless, white or red, 1/2 flying for a strike. Then we have Standard Swamp. Next up we have the Chieftain Eldar, 3-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 2 white. Whenever Chieftain Eldar attacks, attacking creatures gain first strike until end of turn. Next up we have the Caspian Templar, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white. Pay 1 white. Cadaverous Templar gets +0/+1 until end of turn. Next up, we're going to have Terramorphic Expanse, land, tap, sack Terramorphic Expanse, choose your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle your library. Next up, we have Knight of Strongglad, 2-drop, 2/1, 2 black. Pro white, pay 1 black. Knight of Stronghold gains first strike until end of turn, pay 2 black. Knight of Stronghold gets +1/+0 until end of turn. That's another fire breathing, for swamp breathing, so increase your damage output. Next up we have the White Shield Crusader, 2-drop, 2/1, 2 white. Pro black, when Shield Crusader gains flying until end of turn, pay 1 white. Pay 2, Shield Crusader gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and you can pay that as many times as you want. Just like the other knight that we just passed up and the one before that. Next up we have the Plover Knights, 5-drop, 3/3, 3 colorless, 2 white, flying first strike. Next up we have the Blazing Blade Ascari, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 red. Flanking, pay 2 colorless. Blazing Blade Ascari becomes colorless until end of turn. So direct color spells make it not effective. Next up we have the Rune Curvin Rider, 4-drop, 2/2, 3 colorless, 1 white. Flying, pay white or green. Rune Cavalier gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Pay that many as time as you want. Next up we have the Knight of Dusk, 3-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 2 black. Pay 2 black, destroy target creature blocking Knight of Dusk. Next up, we have the Leonin Skyhunter, 2-drop, 2/2, 2 white, flying. That was a Cat Knight. Next up, we have the Steward of Valoran, 2-drop, 2/2, 1 green, 1 white, Vigilance, tap, add green to your mana pool. Next up, we have Teferi's Honor Guard, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white, flanking, pay 2 blue, phase out. Phasing is the ability that makes it remove it from the game, then at the end of the turn comes back into play. There were some interesting tactics back in the day. Like they would phase out until somebody else's turn, so it looked like you would have no enemies, and then all of a sudden they would all reappear. Next up, we have the Squad Atir Lancer, Atar, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 red. Flanking, and Squire Lancer is unaffected by Summoning Sickness, so it has haste. Next up, we have the Fimreef Knight, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white, flanking. Pay 1 white, attacking doesn't cause Furman Knight to tap this turn, so it gives it Vigilance. Next up, we have the Defender of Chaos, 3-drop, 2/1, 2 colorless, 1 red. Protection from white. You may play Defender of Chaos anytime you can play an instant, so it has flash. Standard plain. Next up, we have the Defender of Law, 3-drop, 2/1, 2 colorless, 1 white. Pro red, and you may play Defender of Law anytime you can play an instant. So just start flashing in those blockers. Here's version 3 of the Benalish Knight. I think that one, I'm not sure what series that's from, but that's the 3rd version. Next up, we have the Outrider of Encore, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white, flanking. Pay 0. The next 1 damage that would be dealt to over Outrider this turn is dealt to target creature you control instead, so he has the ability to redirect damage. Next up, we have the Knight of Metalgrain, 2-drop, 2/2, 2 white, Kithkin Knight, 1st strike, lifelink. Next up, we have the Warrior Encore, 2-drop, 2/2, 2 planes. Pay 0, redirect 1 damage from Warrior Encore to a creature you control. That was from the Stronghold series. That was Weatherlight, was the book, the Weatherlight. Next up, we have the Silver Knight, 2-drop, 2/2, 2 planes. 1st strike, pro red. That's from Scourge. Next is the Bogarden Lancer, 2-drop, 1/1, 1 colorless, 1 red. Bloodlust 1. If an opponent was dealt damage this turn, this creature comes into play with a 1/1 counter on it and flanking. Next up, we have the Skyhunter Patrol, 4-drop, 2/3, 2 colorless, 2 white, and flying 1st strike. Next up, we have the Saltari Lancer, 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white, shadow, 1st strike when attacking. Next up, we have the Sangin Guard, 3-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 2 black, 1st strike, pay 2, regenerate, pay 1 colorless, 1 black, regenerate Sanguine Guard. Next up, we have the Order of Yamgoth, 4-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 2 black. Order of Yamgoth cannot be blocked except by artifact creatures and black creatures. When Order of Yagmoth successfully deals damage to a player, that player chooses and discards a card. So knights that do milling. Standard Island, and then we have our 4th installment of the Lancer. But this one's a little bit different. It's got a 3-drop, 2/2, 2 colorless, 1 white. Kicker, 2 colorless, 1 white. You may pay an additional 2 colorless, 1 white as you play this spell. If you pay the kicker cost, Lancer comes into play with 2 1/1 counters on it and has 1st strike. Next off, we have the Orzhov Guildgate. Enters the battlefield tapped. Add white or black to your mana pool. Next up, we have the Rakdos Guildgate. Comes into play tapped. Add black or red to your mana pool. Next up, we have the Gateway Plaza land gate. When gate enters the battlefield tapped, it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you pay 1 colorless, add 1 mana of any color. So we did that. It's in here because that's our mana fixers in case we run short on the land that we need. Next up, we have the Lost Order of Jarkeld. Let's go with Jarkeld. 4-drop, 1+1+ for attacking and defense. 2 colorless, 2 white. Lost Order of Jarkeld has power and toughness equal to 1 plus the number of creature target opponent controls. Next up, we have the Simic Guildgate. I'm going to play tapped, add a green or blue to your mana pool. Next up, we have the Gruul Guildgate. Add red or white to your mana pool. Then we have Nedel's Disc. Nevinjel's. I'm going to butcher the name. We just call it Disc. 4-drop. Disc enters the battlefield tapped. Pay 1, tap, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. Next up, we have Congregate. 4-drop. Instant, 3 colorless, 1 white. Target player gains 2 life for each creature in play. Next up, we have the Order of the White Shield. 2-drop, 2/1, 2 white. Pro Black, pay 1, first strike until end of turn, pay 2, +1/+0 until end of turn. And you can pay that as much as you want. Next up, we have the Knight of the Skywind Eye. 2-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 1 white. Pay 3 colorless, 1 green. Knight of the Sky Eye gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Play its only ability once per turn. So a 2-drop that becomes a 5/5 with a little bit of additional cost. Next up, we go to the Caspian Knight. 2-drop, 1/1, 1 colorless, 1 white. First strike, pay 1 colorless, 1 white. Caspian Knight gets +1/+0 until end of turn. You can pay that as much as you want. Standard Swamp. Next up, we have the Skyhunter Prowler. 3-drop, 1/3, 2 colorless, 1 white. Flying and Vigilance. We have a Standard Swamp. Another Swamp. And we have the Rift Marked Knight. 3-drop, 2/2, 1 colorless, 2 white. Flanking, protection from black, suspend 3. Add a suspend it for a cost of 1 colorless, 2 white. When the last time counter is removed from Rift Marked Knight while it's removed from the game, put a 2/2 black knight creature token with flanking pro white and haste into play. So you're getting 2 for the one of the suspend kinds, so that's pretty interesting. And then for the last one, we have a mountain for the deck, so that will wrap up another one of the early on tribal decks. Like I said, I've been building since the mid-90s, so this was not the best concept, but it was more of just going with tribal and seeing how it goes from there. But we have a bunch more unboxings to go through, so till next time, this is Chabble saying, have a good night, and we shall see you in the next one.